You're really good sports. I want to say thank you to Jay from RBC Dominion Securities for hosting our breakfast this morning, and thank you to the town of Whitby. Daniel is here, I see him somewhere, thank you Daniel, and also Sheila and Braden. They very kindly sponsor the room and help us promote this event. So Frank, as Frank says, you could choose to be anywhere today, and we are very glad that you choose to be here with us and to listen to a great speaker. So Frank, can I invite you up to introduce our speaker?
Awesome. So she took my opening line, so that kind of that was me. This is us.
Welcome!
Awesome. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Yes, so thank you again. We know that you have a choice, and you sound like those airplane guys. So thank you for flying with us today. Listen, I'm delighted. This is our 22nd, our 4th of the year. So when Teresa and I started this, we couldn't believe, and we were talking with Daniel, that here we are 3 years later. And what I do think the reason most people come is exactly what Teresa was saying. For the newbies in the room, this is really about people sharing their stories, letting you know that you're not alone, and that whatever happens, all those sleepless nights, all those business frustrations will lead to success, just like it has led for our speakers, okay? Normally I like to point out speakers in the room that from the past. There is no one today, so there's no one to point out. I want to give out a quick shout out to my good friends there at the AI Hub. We love the young people from the academia. I think this is your 3rd trip, so thank you. Also, thank you to all of you that are here today. It's exciting today because I met Jeff. I really don't know Jeff quite well, but I did meet him at a BACD event. And I thought, I'm always on the lookout for companies, and I thought, did this guy create a Mother's Day gift because he's too cheap to buy anything? And that's exactly how Dimples started. So when Jeff says, well, listen, I'm going to put together this sales presentation, I said, actually, it's not a sales presentation, these things. They're more talks so that we can learn and we can be inspired. So that's for the newbies in the room for the first time. That's what it is, okay? So please, allow me to just give you a little bit of background on Jeff. Jeff Ross is the co-founder and director of business development at Dimples. Dimples is the leading brand and personalized jewelry handmade in Canada and sold globally online at dimplescharms.com. The Dimples brand was built by Jeff and his wife Patti on the fundamental truth that life is a collection of remarkable moments shared with the ones we love. Each of these moments leaves a unique mark in your life, a dimple if you will. Dimples is on a mission to help people capture life's fleeting moments and turn them into lasting memories. And it actually did start on Mother's Day, where he created a dimple, I believe it was, for your newborn child. And the community really loved it, and here he is. You might be surprised to learn that Jeff started his career as a microbiologist in microbiology from the University of Guelph. Great pivot to jewelry. However, feeling unfulfilled working in a laboratory environment, he contemplated returning to school to continue his studies with a master's and PhD. After submitting applications and receiving his acceptance letter, a seed planted in his mind for many years later, he had germinated and he dropped everything and embarked on an epic entrepreneurial venture that he's going to share with us today. Starting with a return to school to study jewelry arts, he proceeded to launch a succession of businesses. Design, develop products, packaging, innovate new materials, receive National Research Council grants, develop a brand, develop initiative software, and basically scale a small company globally, generating millions of dollars in revenue. The best part is his adventure, and Patti, his wife, has only just begun. It wasn't all smooth sailing, especially when you have 3 small children, and the fun and the frustrating day-to-day aspects of raising them and running a small business from a small rural town here in Durham region. But no entrepreneurship adventure would be complete without the tales and struggles and the triumphs of running a business. Jeff's creative and analytical approach to problem solving has enabled Dimples to weather the storm of some dramatic business challenges. He's eager to share that with you. But let me first tell you what we promised you today in the promo summary. Have you ever had a product you're trying to find distribution for? Are you banging your head against the wall trying to figure out how to actually sell the product you have developed, or how to sell more of whatever product or service you have? Are you running a retail store and struggling to bring in more revenue? Producing content like a maniac and not seeing a return on your effort? Or are you still running Facebook and Google ads, wondering why you aren't seeing any ROI? It's driving you crazy, right? You've got to keep the main thing is sales. Whether you sell B2B or B2C, online or off, Jeff has been through it all and wants to help. Co-founder of the Dimples brand and personalized jewelry, was instrumental in growing the distribution of the brand from 1 to 70 points of distribution across Canada within 2 years. He raised the bar by developing an interactive sales kiosk that he put at retail level. And when he saw that the retail apocalypse was kind of changing, he pivoted, and he had the foresight and courage to undertake a dramatic pivot that transitioned the brand to a direct consumer online business. Dimple products are now sold worldwide online, has sold many millions of dollars in personalized and customized jewelry. Jeff believes there is a way to sell your way out of virtually anything, any business problem. Armed with knowledge, he will share and encourage and persistence you to get going from wherever you are to wherever you want to be in a little short time as you can possibly imagine. With that, I would like to turn it over to Jeff. Jeff, welcome to our podium.
That's great, quite a wonderful introduction. I didn't expect you to do my whole presentation though, so we're done. Again, thank you, Frank, for the great introduction. I'm happy to be here and excited to help motivate and inspire you guys with some of the details of my story. And so this is an adventure in sales. Please join me. I had a funny incident recently. Frank asked me to provide him with some information, which I did, and like any entrepreneur, was loaded with all my awesomeness. And he said, why don't you try and make it a little more personal? So I edited that, and still pretty loaded with all of my stuff. And he sends me back some suggestions, like, how about talking about your family? Make it personal. And I can't believe I didn't do that. So when I was a kid, I remember visiting my dad at work, and he had this gray desk, little cubicle, not a single picture of his children. I didn't realize I had grown up to be my father. Wasn't talking about my kids at all. So I included this picture, and that's us right there. We call them the little Rascals. This guy on the left is Charlie. He's a goaltender. I was at a tryout last night till 10 p.m. in Lindsay. The guy on the right is Owen. He is an actor, featured performer in an upcoming production of Newsies in Uxbridge, which is where we're from. That's the small town that Frank was talking about. And right there in the middle, that's Molly. She's an absolute lunatic. She's 7 years old. She runs a candy company called Molly's Candy Co., producing gum and hard candy. She's working on a really great recipe for sour hard candy. Anyways, like Frank had said, we believe at Dimples that life is a collection of remarkable moments shared with the ones you love, and that each of those moments leaves a mark on us, a dimple. That's the origin of the brand. And because our lives are a collection of these remarkable moments, we as a jewelry business sought some sort of way of capturing those moments in an enduring way. And the original one, like Frank mentioned, was a fingerprint charm that I made for my wife after the birth of our first child. It was like totally, really like prototype sort of thing, but it worked out all right, and everybody who saw it loved it. Of course, she was in a bunch of these mommy groups and whatnot, and they kept coming to us. And in the early days, that product was made using a malleable form of sterling silver, which we developed for that process. It was a particularly unique formulation that had the durability and whatnot that we were looking for, and that was where we sought the National Research Council grant funding to pursue the research to develop that. So it was great, but it had its limitations. So we developed some automation in computer-assisted design software to make what we currently do possible. And in addition to the most personalized jewelry, we also create custom fine jewelry. So that is sometimes made using collections of jewelry that you might have from a relative or something that you don't use. We repurpose that. We also do all kinds of things from scratch as well. So, who is ready to learn from somebody else's mistakes and kick some ass? Right, sorry, I couldn't hear you. Okay, awesome. Welcome. So, like I said, I'm glad you're here to join me. Through our business from start to now, I'm not going to say finish, because I believe that we're not done. We're really just getting started. But in the early days, So basically, I'm breaking it into 3 chapters for you because it is in sort of distinct packets. The first chapter is chapter 1. It's retail. We started out in Uxbridge with this little boutique. You know what? Before I do that, let me just ask, how many people here are in some sort of retail business or have a okay, a few. And then how many people here are selling a product or service to another business? Okay. And then the third one is how many people are running a business like exclusively online? Okay, awesome. So there's something for everybody. The first chapter is retail. So originally I had this dream. I wanted to run a boutique fine jewelry store in a small town. So I found Uxbridge. It's great. Has anybody been there?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. It's a pretty nice town, right? Yeah. But one thing it isn't, it's a big town. So starting a retail store in a small town, you probably can't see this, but it says, it's like ice fishing. You sit there alone and cold. Like, that's a pretty bleak picture. But, like, you know how they say location, location, location? Like, it just wasn't really the right location. So what we discovered was, if we were going to be ice fishing, we needed to put more lines in the water. And, but that was essentially where we realized that our dream could quickly become a nightmare. So I can't remember who it was who said it. It was something like, I think it might have been Jim Rohn. Don't pray for the wind to change. Pray for the wisdom to set a better sail. So we started right there to figure things out and make whatever we were doing work and move towards something else. And the next thing was business to business. So we had developed the Dimples product. We were selling it from our own little boutique, but we realized if we wanted to scale, we needed to go to other businesses. And in our case, that was jewelry stores. And that particular experience is where we learned that sales processes can really help scale an enterprise. So the third chapter, after we went through the whole B2B thing, and we grew from 0 to about 70 points of sale across the country in around 2 years. But we realized there was something going on in the retail landscape, particularly with jewelry. So we moved on to chapter 3, which was online. And we've sort of transitioned to do that exclusively, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how. So in each of these chapters, I'm going to elaborate on some of the things that really helped us get through each of them, spare you some of the gory details, and just leave you with the real pearls of wisdom. So chapter 1, like I mentioned, and like you've heard a million times, with retail, it's location, 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 which is true. Except there's one other thing that people generally don't seem to talk about. It's that you've got to be open when people are buying. So if you're in a small town or a big town or something, but you close your store at 5 and everybody's shopping when they get from work at 6 or 7 or 8 o'clock, you're missing out on all those sales. So that also left me wondering, like, geez, you know, I've got this young family, can I be open all the time and still see my children? So that was part of the seed that, or the foundation of chapter 2. The second thing we came away with was staying in touch. So because we had this little boutique, people would come through it all the time, but you know, once they're there, they're gone. And we needed a way to get more lines in the water. So what we did was we started doing this gift. It's going to sound simple and ridiculous, but it worked really, really well. We put this gift basket out, all fancy, full of stuff, local shops and whatnot, beautifully wrapped, and we put these little cards next to it. And the card, believe it or not, it wasn't just like your name and your email address and your phone number. It asked for your birthday and your anniversary. And you might think that nobody would provide such personal information, especially to a jeweler, but look at this face. I'm an honest guy. I'm an honest guy, and people just seemed willing. I don't know, if it worked for you? Maybe, I hope so. It worked for me. So we got personal information, birthdays, anniversaries, phone numbers, email addresses, all kinds of stuff. And we would have these great conversations. So I learned really personal stuff about people. Like, you know, my wife loves chocolate cookie dough. So the next thing is make it personal. We would reach out, strategically reach out to communicate in advance of birthdays and anniversaries with all of those people. And we would do it in a way that was really personal. Like we might send some chocolate cookie dough to someone. and with a little card that said, hey, your birthday's coming up, happy birthday. And that was like a really big deal for people. We would send out Christmas gifts and all kinds of stuff. So they sort of became friends. They really trusted us with their purchases and the celebration of the most important events in their lives. So that's what I mean when I said make it personal. It's really important if you're doing retail. Nowadays in particular, more than ever before, people are looking for an experience. They can buy something cheap online whenever they want, 2 in the morning. But they can't develop a relationship or get advice from anybody. So it's those personal touches, for those of you who run retail, that really make the difference in terms of your enterprise and your longevity and the relationships you have with your customers and the amount that they'll spend with you. So that takes us to Chapter 2, B2B. This is where, invest some serious time discovering your customer, where your customers are. Right. What we needed to do was figure out, if we're going to sell this thing outside of our retail store, where are we going to sell it? And one of the greatest bits of advice that somebody gave me early on was first to take a step back and look around and ask yourself, where are your customers already buying? Now, in our case, that relatively quickly led logically to jewelry stores. But it is a great question, because you might think it's jewelry stores, but maybe it's some other place. Like, we actually found out, believe it or not, that funeral homes was a pretty big thing for us, because people who have lost a loved one are really looking for something that they can hang on to, something tangible. So you never know where that is actually going to be until you take a step back and have a close look and give it some serious thought and contemplation, and ask other people or customers, where are you shopping? What are you doing? The second thing that was a real asset for us is something that I call list hacking. So if you're selling B2B, everybody talks about the sales funnel, right? Like, oh, the sales funnel. It's not just an infographic. You gotta constantly throw new names in the top. And if you're working on closing business at the bottom, there's probably nobody throwing new names in the top. So you need to find a constant source of new names. Now, list hacking, you can go out and buy from whatever, Scott's or Hoover's, or a list, a pretty targeted list, and that's great. You will have to pay for it. But what we chose to do was hack. And basically we went to like the Canadian Jewelry Association and the Canadian, I can't remember the actual name, Association for Funeral Homes. And you can literally just scrape the site for the membership, and it's all the company owners, email addresses, telephone numbers, everything, completely free. And then in terms of process, it was get the name, basically it was cold calling, like old school. We tried LinkedIn and, creating white papers and send, it just took forever. If we could just sit someone down at a phone and, give them some lunch, let them have a bathroom break now and again, and just stay on the phone calling people. We found that stuff was coming out the bottom of the funnel. And that was great for us. So the major takeaway with B2B, and it relates to the first chapter, is that process. If you can create the process, like get the lists, either yourself or somebody else, calling, you're moving through like a script from, it's the first call, it's the next call, you're tracking how many calls does it take before we get to a key decision maker there. When we get to the key decision, how many calls, how many emails, does it require face-to-face visits? Like, you really need to clearly articulate the entire process, map it out, and make it reproducible. And that was the major learning for us from the Chapter 2 B2B. Now, in our case, we were selling B2B. We had like 70-something retail jewelry stores across the country, a smaller number of funeral homes. And with the jewelry stores in particular, although we relatively rapidly got to 70 stores, because we had developed this material and we had done all this stuff, we couldn't get into the US because we the shipping across the border and whatnot was a problem. Basically, at that point, we were noticing that of the 70 stores that we had, around 10% of them a year were closing, either due to bankruptcy or like a retirement with no succession plan. And so just to keep on top of the number we had was like we had to just keep more calls. And we realized like there's, something is going on here. We're losing these stores. It's trouble to just maintain that number. So growing it was even harder. And in the process of solving the problem of expanding outside of the country, we developed this interactive kiosk and this computer-assisted design software, which we started to roll out to these retailers. Around the same time, we were discovering, wait a second, maybe this isn't the right thing to do. So after we had gone through the process of developing this whole thing, we realized, hey, we've got this digital technology. This is actually an online business. What are we doing selling through these retail channels when we have a global opportunity online? So at that point, we made the decision to move into chapter 3. And that is online. So those of you folks in here who also run online businesses, the technology that's available to automate like everything is unbelievable. So you really have to make good use of it because you can't do it all yourself. It's totally impossible. And for us, we started out with a website on Shopify and went through a progression. Like if anybody tells you, oh, this is your website, it's done, it's not done. And it's never going to be done. You're going to be constantly working on it, constantly moving through iterations and adding new features and whatnot. And that is a really important fact to know. It's just a constant work in progress. So any of the website platforms have all kinds of integrations for things like CRM, automated marketing. Like we've used Hootsuite and MailChimp and HubSpot. Relatively recently started using shopper-approved reviews because once you get a certain number of reviews, Google automatically ranks you far higher in search. Which brings me to Google. Analytics, it's like an absolute, it's unmanageable. How many of you have checked out Google Analytics? You get on there and there's like a million things you could possibly track. But for each of your businesses, the most important of those things will only be a small number. So what we discovered was that there were 3 to 5 that were really important for us, and we basically just forgot about everything and started focusing on those 3 to 5 things. We track them like mad, and we make changes and split test everything so that we can get the analytics, get the feedback to see what's working and what's not, and make changes immediately, which was much harder when we were selling retail or B2B. So online has really been tremendously powerful for us in terms of our ability to scale. The next biggest thing, this is probably actually the biggest thing, is collabs, collaborations. Now, if you talk to people about online, you go to a mentor or an advisor. I mean, everybody is out there trying to do their best to help you, but a lot of the advice is do you have a Facebook page? It is 2019. And most people have Facebook pages. The most important thing is what you're using it for, how you're using it, and how you're interacting with people and who you're interacting with. So collabs is another one of those things that people would say, oh, have you thought of influencers? We totally had. In fact, we'd reached out to, I don't even know how many. Here, give me a piece of your jewelry and I'll do a post. We reached out to breakfast television, the social, we did everything. And each of them would be like a one-off kind of thing. You'd be on breakfast television, you think, oh, this is, we're making it rain. And it would happen, it would be very short-lived, and then we'd be like, oh man, I thought that was gonna change everything, and it didn't. So we had this succession of these sort of individual one-off relationships, and made a discovery It's gonna sound probably a little strange, but you know when you've got like some heavy issue on your brain and you're just sort of like, don't know what to do or how to deal with it, but you're constantly asking yourself, how's it gonna happen, how's it gonna happen? One day, it was like mid-afternoon, really late for lunch. I walked into the local grocery store, and I have this on my mind, like I'm just wandering around in a daze, trying to answer this question. And I walked into, it was Zehrs. Zehrs has this radio station, probably all grocery stores do it, but on the station at that time was this ad for PC pet insurance. And I didn't even know, we don't have a pet. I did growing up, and I know my parents didn't pay for pet insurance, because who would do that? If any of you do, I apologize, you do. Awesome, we got a customer right here. But I was thinking, like, wait a minute, people who pay for pet insurance probably have loads of dough, and love their pets, and want to do something special to celebrate. This is there'd be a lot of synergy there. So, it's like I may have actually bought the lunch. I was so inspired, I went right back to the shop and started making a list of pet insurance companies and who do I contact, how would I do that? And we ended up making a relationship. Let me just press pause for 1 second. On one of the earlier slides you might have seen, I'm going to try and do this with a screen this entire thing up. This right here,
Yeah.
those are pet paw prints. And they're not just random, they belong to the person who bought those pieces. So because we had developed this computer-assisted design automation, we could actually use more than fingerprints. We started using pet paws, and it was at that time, like it was when I walked into the grocery store, I heard this pet insurance thing that gave me that idea. So, where were we? Chapter 3. So the whole collab thing is not like find an influencer who can tell people about you once. It's find like a strategic alliance with a larger enterprise who services way more of your customers than you currently do. And with the pet insurance company and companies like that, they have email lists of like hundreds of thousands of people. And like, just like you start running out of stuff to email people. How many times can you say, buy my, please, buy my product? You gotta come up with unique, value to add. So they're always looking for new things to share. So we communicated with them, we pitched this idea that, they could, in an email, offer a deep discount exclusively to their email subscribers, a deep discount on our products. And this was another one of those things where you're like, I hope, fingers crossed, we went through the time, we developed this relationship, I hope it works. The initial email was like one blast, 20,000 people.
Wow.
And it was like, I think that one email generated like 20 grand. Wow. And it was just all of a sudden, overnight. So that was when we learned the value of collaborations. Right now we're working on another one with DocuPet, and we've got a few ongoing all the time. And these sorts of relationships are the ones you want to focus on. Instead of going like, so-and-so has 1 million Instagram subscribers, chances are they're not gonna answer your message. And if they do, they've already got a system in place to charge you for, it's basically advertising dollars for them. So there is no like, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. This type of relationship worked really, really well for us, and I would encourage you to think about those things too. So that's the 3 chapters. Obviously there's like way more detail in each of them, and I invite you to reach out and communicate with me after, or at any point in the future. I'll share my contact information with you. But underneath all of that, there's some like, I guess it's psychology or something that really helped us to change the way we looked at things. I'll give you an example. When I graduated and started in the jewelry industry, I worked for a notable custom designer in the city, but I sort of like, this is like totally honest, I'm gonna be frank. I was, in my mind, like sort of subconsciously, I was like, jewelry is a luxury, like, nobody needs jewelry. I had all this kind of like weird self-talk, right? Totally unsupportive. And at some point, I just realized I was doing that and started changing it to things like people want to celebrate. Like, I knew people who were lawyers and they're like litigating divorces and like, all the end of everything. And here I was with a product that was really celebrating the start of a lot of things, like engagements, relationships, love, anniversaries, birthdays, graduations. Like, there was a lot of things that people love to celebrate, and jewelry is one of the few things that is like really enduring and tangible, and it sometimes lasts generations. So I put this up here. You probably can't see it from the back, but the first circle at the top is thoughts. The next one is feelings, and the one on the left is behavior. So when I was thinking jewelry is a luxury, who needs it, like, it felt bad, right? Like, I didn't feel like I could do anything. And because I didn't feel super, I wasn't really taking supportive actions that were moving us towards our goals. And this actually, it wasn't like I dealt with this at the very beginning. This lasted for like a few years before I realized, geez, I better clean up my thinking on this. So doing that, like really having that honest self-assessment, like how do I feel about what I'm doing? What am I actually doing? What's the importance? Like anywhere you go, everybody talks about what problem you're solving. And if you're not answering that question with like a good answer, if you can't come up with a good answer, you got to spend a little more time thinking about it or change what you're doing, because if you don't have a good answer, you're not going to be feeling right about it. You're not going to end up taking the right actions. Another thing on sales specifically, we did a sales incubator thing out in Waterloo. It was with Communitech. It was called Revenue University. And it was all like early tech companies. For us, because we had developed this process automation and this interactive kiosk, we were sort of a good fit, but still a little bit tangential because of the product that we sold, not like strictly tech. We were like a square peg in a round hole there. But when we were there, it was all people who were like trying to learn about sales. And there was one guy who developed an app that was for real estate agents to help connect their potential home buyers with service people in their community, like roofers and tile people and home renovators and electricians. And so this guy needed to be able to either sell access to his app to the real estate agents or to the service providers. And every time he was asked a question, it was like, I'm not really a salesperson. I can't ask them that. And that, again, back to this cycle here. If those are the thoughts that you've got, I'm not a salesperson, I can't do that, you're not gonna be feeling optimistic and positive and like really passionate about selling, so you're not gonna be taking the right actions to sell your product. So, of all of the stuff that I mentioned in the first 3 chapters, this is not a chapter, this is just some advice. Really dig deep personally and understand what your underlying thoughts and beliefs are about sales and about your product and about what you're doing, because understanding that and making sense of it and then changing what you're thinking to something that's more supportive it sounds like hokey pokey and everything, but it will honestly change the way you feel and the actions that you take, which can only lead to different results. So if you're looking for different results, start by taking a look at yourself. That's all I'll say on that. And then nothing happens until somebody sells something. This was Mary Kay. Everybody knows, right? Mary Kay. Yeah, nothing happens until somebody sells something, right? You do. If you're in business for yourself, You're a salesperson. It's period. So accept it and start learning. You like learn it, and sales. Like if you're online, sales isn't just pick up the phone. Hey, want to buy a vacuum? It's copywriting. It's your graphics, your imagery. It's all the things that will compel somebody to make a choice to buy something. So when I say in your business for yourself, you're a salesperson, it doesn't mean you necessarily have to make cold calls. What you have to do is learn what it takes for you to sell your product or service to the people who will buy it, and then learn more and make sure you do all of it. Because until you do it, nothing is going to change, right? How are we doing on time?
Good.
Yeah? Okay. Because I'm drawing too close here, right? So the reality is, no matter what you sell or how you sell it, you will sell way more when you develop a clearly articulated process for sales that you can scale. So whether it's in a retail store, or you're selling business to business, or you're selling direct to consumers online, until you can take the time to develop a process, and you'll be like, yeah, I'm so busy, I've got this customer and that customer, oh, there's this contract thing I have to do, got to speak to the lawyer, we're working on that website. This will probably seem like the last thing on your list, but you really got to move that up to the top, because until you can develop like a machine that just churns out revenue for you, you're not going to get where you want to go. And speaking of where you want to go, I did wrap this up early. I probably should have talked more about chapters 1, 2, and 3, which I can do during questions. So what I'll just close with, please get in touch. I invite you to reach out, check us out online, dimplescharms.com. You're welcome to email me here if you can see it. If not, it's jeff@dimplescharms.com. Phone number, we're also on Instagram and Facebook as Dimples Charms. And we're also doing something kind of fun. It's a bit of a side hack, really. It's called F That. And I mentioned this before speaking with Frank. If you're tired of doing what you're doing and getting what you're getting, then join F That on Facebook. Because we're trying to build a community of people who are like, pissed off and sick and tired of just doing the same stuff and then looking back at the last year or 2 years or 5 years and going, geez, I'm not any farther ahead. What's going on? So if that's you, join us there. It's not going to be us like ranting and raving or trying to sell you something. We're trying to build a community of people who are looking for support and to support each other. So please check us out there, fthat.co. It will actually take you right to our Facebook page. So that is it. I'm sorry it was short, but I hope you enjoyed it.